a little bit of light. So have you ever been to a cooking class before? Yeah. This isn't going to be one of them. This is my mom's recipe for cookies. You guys make cookies, chocolate chip cookies? Whenever I hear, when I come home, and Cosette runs up to me and she says, "Mom, I made chocolate chip cookies for us today," I get so excited. I am thrilled when someone makes chocolate chip cookies. My mom, at every special occasion that we had, she would make the best Toll House cookies. And she had a special fork that she would use to make it with. And this was the bowl. Throughout all my years growing up, this is the bowl my mom would use. She, yeah, Tupperware, I'm assuming so. It's been melted and beaten up, but it's the magic behind the cookies, I swear it. That and her fork, which we never could find. But chocolate chip cookies, when you make chocolate chip cookies, when you hear someone say, "Hey, we've got chocolate chip cookies," or lemonade, something sweet and good time has been put into that, are you excited? Are you excited like, yay, I get to celebrate eating because this is chocolate and it's in a cookie form and this is good. Do you ever think about what has to go into making a chocolate chip cookie? You've made it before. I'm sure there's a recipe on the back here. When you stop and you think and celebrate chocolate chip cookies, I think we rarely stop and belabor and think, oh my gosh, the process. I mean, we could go out and buy cookies. But when you stop and think what goes into it, but it ends really well. But along the way, you've got flour, right? You've got a lot of flour, and you're supposed to have like a couple cups of flour that go into it, like 2 something. Okay. Anyway, and sometimes it gets a little messy. And then you have to add, okay, baking soda. What's baking soda for? What? I have no idea what that is. Oh, okay. It makes it rise. I always get nervous about baking soda because I'm afraid if I put too much in, it's going to do something bad. I don't know why. Does it ever blow up things? Uh-huh. See, that scares me. Okay, so baking soda, salt, I always skip that. Butter. The cool thing about butter, you come these cool sticks. Whoever put butter in sticks, that's very, very smart, right? But then what do we do to it? We put it, I do, in the microwave, and it melts, and I probably shouldn't do that. Oh, shoot. Okay, I really didn't mean to do that. Okay, so we're going to go a different route. So we put the butter in there, but the butter melts. Okay, then you have sugar. Now, if you missed sugar, what would these taste like? Yeah. Okay, 3/4 cup. And you have white sugar, and then you have brown sugar. Anyone's OCD out there? You're not going to like this. Yeah, you are, honey? Huh. Okay, so you put the white and the brown together. You mix it all up, right? Okay, so then what else do you have in there? Vanilla. Vanilla, and sometimes I grab almond extract by mistake because I didn't look close enough. Anyway, we put a teaspoon, something like that, in there. All right, and then eggs. Oh, shoot, honey, can you go grab the eggs? They're in the kitchen. They're in the refrigerator on the side door. They're in a little container of eggs. Now, I love the egg part. Do you know why? Yes. Okay, so eggs are nice and smooth and beautiful, and it just, if we could keep them like that in the recipe, that would be very cool. But you can't, and so to get to the recipe, you actually have to break them. Well, while they're doing that, we're going to mix. I was supposed to mix things differently, but so you mix it all up. Wait, we're supposed to have chocolate chips. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So Christina, I asked Christina if she would get the chocolate chips. I was imagining the 12-ounce size. I really like how Christina thinks, because then you can put as many as you want. Oh my gosh, that's probably not 12 ounces. Okay, so eggs, here they are. If you really want to get to a good chocolate chip cookie recipe, you have to break the eggs. All right. And try not shh. There's just a little shell in there. Okay. All right, and then you dump it in. All right. And this is looking so beautiful, isn't it? Don't you want to eat that? But you like chocolate chip cookies, right? Oh my God, and this is my mom's bowl, and it's a little messy, but did I forget anything? I don't think so, but this isn't quite looking right. Okay, well, we want to add a little bit more of something. So, milk? No, we've got butter. Oh, okay. Do you guys ever add oats? Occasionally. Oats. Now, when you look at oats, they're the most fascinating little things, like little flecks of texture. And that's what I like in cookies. So it's not just smooth. It has a little bit of, I don't know, crunch. So we'll just put some of that in there. And then you mix it. And it gets harder to mix when you add more stuff to it. But if you really want to get to the end result, you got to go through the hard work, right? Unless you want to go out and get a store-bought cookie. Do those taste the same? Not the least bit. So I seriously, does anyone want to go to the oven and put these in? Seriously. We could have chocolate chip cookies by the end of the service. Oh, seriously? Okay, well, wow. All right, so chocolate chip cookies. If you really want it to turn out good, oh wait, have you ever tasted the cookie dough? Anyone a cookie dough eater? But they're good chickens, so they're probably okay. It tastes good. But if you really want the cookie to turn out, what do you have to do at the end? What? Oh my gosh. What? You have to let that cool? What? How do you bake it? You have to put it in heat. Lots of heat, high heat. 350. Would you like to go into 350 degrees? No, but the cookies love it because they become cookies then in the middle of the heat. All right, open your Bibles to James. James 1. Consider it. James 1. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. When I read that verse and I was thinking about chocolate chip cookies, I read it like this. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials, challenges, hard work, the messiness, lengthy processes in life of many kinds, because you know that the testing, the breaking of the shells, the melting, the chaos, the high temperature cooking kind of testing in your life, the testing of your faith produces perseverance, produces good things when you go through these trials, when the shells break and the butter melts and the chocolate gets mixed up. Good things come out of it, good character traits, strength, discernment, the sweet kind of soul stuff. Let perseverance finish its work. Get to the end of the process. Don't shortcut it. Don't stop before you get to the oven, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. When the cookie comes out of the oven, the smell of it fills the house. It's flavorful, it's tasty, it brings you joy and allows you to give that joy to others if you are willing to share your cookies. With cookies and with life, I think the challenges, the trials, the rips and the tears, the mess, the broken pieces, and the melted parts are worth every second because they are the gateway to joy. As our trials in our life, those hardships, those difficulties are gateways to joy. As I said at the very beginning of this series, it's not the absence of difficulties, it's not the absence of hardships, but rather because of them, in the midst of them, thank you so much, in the midst of these trials and hardships that we go through, this is when God can bestow blessings that had we skipped that process, had we skipped the breaking and the tearing and the mess, we would not be able to experience what he has in store for us. And if you like cookie dough, then even in the midst of the mess, in the midst of our lives, God gives us these blessings. He shows us all around in our lives, through our friends, our family, scripture, through relief, through beautiful sunsets. He gives us those blessings along the way to get us through. So often I think, just like when we think about chocolate chip cookies, we want the quick way out. We want to just race down to the store and buy it. Easy way out, quickest way to get to the end. But it's never as good. The best reality, our best growth in ourselves, I think, like a process of making cookies, is more of a gradual process that takes time and is messy and sometimes painful, but it will net the good result that we want. The biggest myth about joy, this whole series is on finding joy even when, fill in the blank, the biggest myth is that joy flourishes in good times, in easy times, without struggle, that it's a byproduct of positive experiences. That's what joy is. But life's most chaotic messes, as we know, can lead to something incredibly delicious and great joy. And I think that's why God keeps allowing and sometimes bringing challenges into our life, because it sets us off into a myriad of mixing bowl experiences with lots of broken egg shrapnel and white flour moments that powder our clothes and faces. He allows these because he believes in his great love that true transformation, real, deep transformation, cannot happen in a clean kitchen. True transformation cannot happen when everything is pristine and still and calm. Transformation happens when things are at disequilibrium. They get a little messy. We have to sort things through a bit and find our standing and hold on to God. And that's when transformation in our life happens. James, consider it pure joy. Pure joy. I like to look at another way. Choose to celebrate. Choose to celebrate. When you hear that chocolate chip cookies are coming, your taste buds start celebrating at the mere mention of chocolate chip cookies, but mine do. When you face trials of many kinds, when you look at strategies, perhaps the strategy of celebration is something we should consider when we face our trials, so we can face them with joy. Celebrating, I think, then becomes essentially commitment to the process. Celebration becomes commitment with a party hat on. Celebrating is daring to make that lemonade out of lemons and cookies out of the mess. When you dare to believe that something good can and will come out of something bad, that you will grow, that you will become something better by going through it, because God has allowed it in your life. And if he has allowed it in your life, it is only because he has a plan to bring you joy through it. Even if you don't know when, you don't know what it's going to look like or how it's going to come out, because God is with you, who is the master chef of our lives, at our side, then we can know with 100% surety it will be okay. So you don your party hat, you crank up your music, and you dance while the flour flies around and the eggs break. And you can sing in the midst of the process and the trials, because only good is going to come out of the mess and the heat of your trial. Now, sometimes as I was thinking through this in my own life, you can pause and you think, gosh, that sounds kind of glib. You know, just party, celebrate when you're having a difficulty in a trial. And I wonder, okay, practically speaking then, what would it look like for us to celebrate, to have pure joy in our suffering? What would it look like to throw a party in the midst of our pain? And I read about this lady who I think gave a good example of this. She's this elderly lady, and she would volunteer her time outside of a hospital to direct people through the facility, which way to go. So she would perch herself right near the front entrance. She had these little cute ringlets of gray circles and had this kind face and this really tender grin that she would give to people. And she could have chosen to spend her days just chatting with friends of bygone years and people watching at the mall. But instead, she chose to give her time, to volunteer her time and give joy and directions and help to those needing directions through the medical complex. Instead of hoarding her time, she gave hellos and smiles. The point is, she did this all from a wheelchair. She did this from a wheelchair, the very symbol of life's trials and limitations and restraints on her. But this wheelchair was not just a normal wheelchair, not when she got a hold of it, because she wanted to celebrate in the midst of her suffering. And so this wheelchair was decked out with all sorts of colors and pom-poms, and she would wear bright clothes, and she would have these pins with funny one-liners on it, and she had a bear in scrubs perched on the back of it. And it was a party. It was a party in a wheelchair. And she would smile, and she would help, and she would give. And despite the constant reminder of her limitations, she found a way to throw confetti in the midst of crisis. What would it look like for you to celebrate in your hardships? I think we can look to Nehemiah. He was one that certainly knew how to do this. Margaret Feinberg, in her book, Fighting Back with Joy, when I was doing this study, it was profound what she brought out in the Old Testament, New Testament, all the ways that people learned to celebrate in the midst of crisis. Nehemiah, incredible, thousands of years ago, he had a whole boatload of adversity come to him. Jerusalem had been leveled to the ground by Babylon more than about 100 years previous, and now Nehemiah has been sent to rebuild the city. Now imagine how depressed he must have been as he topped the hill and he looks out over what used to be this amazing city, and it's all rubble now. And this crushing weight presses down on him as he walks among the ruins, wondering what the heck happened and how are we at all going to get beyond this? This is a prophet of God sent for the people of God. And it says in Nehemiah, he just breaks down and weeps, looking at this crumpled mess. However, rather than give in to despair, this prophet chooses instead to find joy, even when his world is decimated. He shifts his focus. He changes the title on his business card from government worker to building contractor. And he learns about stone and mortar, and then he gets his buddy Ezra involved, and they work through the scripture, and side by side, these two team up to restore the walls of God, of his city, and reconnect the people with God again. Of course, it's not an easy task. Once he is accepted and adapted, then he has to sincerely depend on God, as we talked about last week, because he has obstacles and opposition cropping at every turn, cropping up everywhere. Some speculate that the new walls are part of a conspiracy to keep them out. Other naysayers are tearing at Nehemiah's character, his competency, and his employment history, and the construction crews threaten to walk off the job completely. Well, somehow, even in the midst of all this, he continues to adapt and continues to depend on God through these trials, and he finishes this project in record time. And so the people assemble. It's time then to celebrate, right? Well, no, the people assemble, and Ezra starts reciting the teachings of Moses, and the crowd starts crying, weeping at the realization of how far they have distanced themselves from God. All their shortcomings, as they hear God's words, the emotions are just running high, the grieving, the lamenting, and sorrow. It's a very dark moment. And then an unforeseen twist. Nehemiah stands up and instructs the people to dry their eyes and celebrate. He says, "Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." So essentially, in the midst of the darkest moment here, in the midst of this, Nehemiah essentially advises the people to hire an event planner, to light the grill, stock up on Hebrew national hot dogs, and he directs them to include strangers and servants and orphans and widows and all the poor in this party that he's about to have. Nehemiah, this great man of God, he somehow knows that when life knocks us down, it's merrymaking and joy in God that boosts us back up. That we cannot continue in any endeavor for very long without joy being a part of it. And then God, throughout the Old Testament, New Testament, God is right in line with finding time for joy. I love in the Psalms, it talks about the Leviathan, which is a bizarre sea creature that God formed to play with, to sport with. The Hebrew word used in this verse means to laugh, to be merry, to joke. This is Leviathan. I don't want to run into a Leviathan out when I'm swimming somewhere, but God created him for joy. It's almost like God takes this Leviathan, something so ominous and dark, and turns it into a playground for joy making. What if we could look at our dark times in the same way? With God, all-powerful, mighty God who can create and do anything, man, this darkness, this trial, this difficulty, we're going to make this a playground with God. It's not an isolated example. The Old Testament, God commanded the Israelites over and over that throughout the year, they were supposed to celebrate his wonders and his provision. From Passover to Yom Kippur to Pentecost, God carves out 7 parties a year. And one of them, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, lasts for an entire week. Then again, every 49th year, during the year of Jubilee, love that title, the year of Jubilee, no one goes to work, all debts are canceled, and slaves are freed. There is this, I would like to not work for a year. God institutes a rhythm of celebration for his people. And it didn't have any clauses in there that if you're running out of money, or if famine strikes the land, or if you're at war, don't party. There's not that provision. It's a command by God, party anyway. So to our modern mind, it's hard enough to do Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day. Imagine 7 parties, big, huge community parties, and a whole week-long party. How do you get anything done? And you think about our work lists and our to-do and our tasks, the lawn care and the meetings and the homework, and it seems a bit excessive, irresponsible, even in the midst of all that we have to do to be good, responsible parents and workers and whatevers. How can we possibly stop to celebrate, especially when things are so heavy and hard in our life? And yet I believe that God instituted this rhythm of celebration because these holy events, this holy habit of celebrating allows us to taste, to see, to declare and remember God's goodness. It reorients us toward his presence and his faithfulness, and it helps reset our expectations to face a new direction, a God perspective, God power direction. The New Testament is full of joyful bashes. It's interesting to note that Jesus performs some of his most memorable wonders at celebrations, from his first miracle that he did at the wedding reception in Cana to his finale, which was his resurrection, which occurred in the middle of a feast. Jesus made parties don't miss events. And the Bible concludes, of course, with a giant dinner party where we all come together to feast and worship Jesus together. God loves a good party, but unfortunately that seems to be the last thing on our minds when we are in the midst of darkness and despair, our struggles and challenges. And yet if we can grasp this God-given concept of celebration as a spiritual discipline, then we'll start to recognize that joy, when we step into joy, it begets joy. Joy begets joy. Even the faintest expression of celebration, of delighting in the midst of, will infuse us with strength and fill us with hope. Because what I believe it does, even the smallest acts of thanksgiving, of pausing to smile and delight, it is a letting go. It is a resting from the heaviness. And it reveals and reinforces our inward trust in God's ability to carry on, to meet our needs. That's what we do every Sabbath, isn't it? Every Sabbath is a celebration, a reminder that whatever we're going through, we need to rest from it. We need to come together as family and friends and celebrate and have joy because God's got this. God's got whatever we're struggling with in our life. And so this Sabbath, this weekly celebration, this is incredible. I love coming here. I get energized no matter what kind of week. I get energized by you guys, by the joy you bring, what we bring together that God brings to us. And God says, this is my will, that you will know I am your God. You can trust in me, I will provide for you, and you can have joy abundantly. I love how Margaret Feinberg puts it, mirth has a magical way of poking holes in the darkness until we see the stars. Isn't that good? We need to find ways to metaphorically throw confetti in the midst of our crisis. It's more than just frivolity. It reawakens our souls to God. It helps us lift our eyes again away from ourselves and upward to Him. I love the concept that parties can actually become prayers of faith and trust in God. It's an act of reaffirmation that with God, like we just sang, all things are possible. We can delight in the midst of the darkness, knowing He is our light and He will walk us through. I love the story of author Leo Buscaglia. He was growing up and he talks about his misery dinner that his family had. It was a night after his father had come home and said it looked as if they were going to have to go through bankruptcy. Actually, this is the first time I'm mentioning it, but you're welcome to sit there, so that's cool. It's the second time. It's coming close. That he thought they was going to go through bankruptcy, and because his partner had completely absconded with all his funds, and so his mother, at that point, you would think they'd be absolutely devastated. All their money was gone. Their work was gone. They didn't know what they were going to do. The mother takes her jewelry, goes out and sells it so that she can buy food for a sumptuous feast that night. Now, all the members of the family, extended family, completely scolded her for doing this, being completely irresponsible. And her response to them was, the time for joy is now, when we need it most. Not next week, but now. Celebration is a determined habit of practicing abundance in the midst of scarcity. It is our active rummaging for God in the midst of every situation until we find His goodness again. I believe that if we want to throw the best party ever in our lives, perhaps we should follow God's example and throw one smack dab in the middle of a trial. Learn how to dance. Start a conga line when we'd rather sleep. Find ways to laugh when we'd rather lie on the floor and cry. Cook a feast when the circumstances completely steal our appetite. And be sure, like Nehemiah, to invite our friends, our neighbors, strangers, those who others forget. Bring together so they'll know there's strength in God that comes from joy. Sometimes when it's especially hard in our lives, it takes real intentionality, I think, to seek out celebration in trial times. It can be hard work, that spiritual discipline. But I think if we got this spiritual discipline right, some of the other ones can get kind of boring. I'm sorry. It's hard. Spiritual discipline, there's a reason why it's saying that. But if you start with the spiritual discipline of joy, it will infuse the others with joy as well and lead us on. And I think as we follow in the footsteps of the divine, that joy will come. And He will take this strategy and realize that now, in the midst of your difficulty, you can practice the fine art of partying. Whatever battlefield you're in, whether you're stuck in a relationship or work or a conflict or whatever's going on in your soul, there are ways to open the doors and let the sunshine dance in with the darkness. Here's a couple ideas. As you think of celebrations, certainly we think party, but there are minor little celebrations that we do throughout our lives, throughout our days. Maybe in the midst of a tense workplace, you bring donuts, a delivery of donuts, and that sparks smiles. Maybe it's surprising this coworker that completely frustrates you to no end. Instead of, you bring them a latte. Perhaps it's allowing yourself to be playful with the sharp complaints that come your way. And instead of getting angry about them, you kind of play with them and give back a compliment. Intentionally opening the doors for celebrating joy can be as simple as giving encouragement when someone is down, buying yourself a bright Gerber daisy and sticking it by your bedside, taking time to play games and laugh with your friends. Every time you have your to-do list increased by 10, it's like a lottery bell that goes off. And you're like, I get to play now because 10 more items got put on my list. It can be a celebration. It's like winning every time you have to work. Or maybe, looking at James 1, maybe we literally throw a party in the midst of our hard times. Now, I actually gave this some thought. What would a hard times party look like? And I thought, okay, well, you could hire a rock band because you've hit the rocks, you know, or at least play rock music. You could serve Rocky Road ice cream. Your drinks could be on the rocks. Of course, you could have lemonade and cookies and all the mess that goes with it to celebrate the blessings. You can dress up like geologists, because they deal with rocks, don't they? Play rock, paper, scissors. And for the invitations, you take the invitation, you tie it to a rock, especially if you don't have enough people at your party, and you throw it through someone's window. Then they'll want to come to your party and tell you about their hard time with you. The practice, of course, will vary. But the point is that celebration in the midst of our dark times is God-like, it is God-ordained, and it is God-focused. Because what it does, instead of focusing on what's been taken away from us, it helps us find reason to offer thanks for what remains and what God will do when he takes us through to the end. James 1 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And you skip down to verse 12. People stop usually there, but you skip down to verse 12. "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." Now let me just focus 1 second. The crown of life, not a crown of jewels, not a gold crown, the crown of life. This is what you get when you persevere through your dark times. Life, abundant, joyful, celebration-worthy kind of living. A joyful life is what we get when we choose to develop the holy habit of celebrating in the midst of our trials. That story of Leo Buscaglia, what his mom did when things were the tightest, she threw a feast. And she lived believing that life was to be celebrated, and she gave up what was valuable to her in order to find joy and bring joy to others. Not one day when they could afford it, but right now. And when I think of Inspire, what we are here, we are all in hard times in our lives. It doesn't matter what level, what place in our life it is, but we are facing dark times in our personal walks. But we have been called as a church body to live abundantly, generously, to throw feasts in the face of frustrations, to dance when it's dark, to celebrate when others cave in, because we have a God who has overcome. And we've been called to give up in order to give out, to sacrifice, to bring joy to others, to bring life and joy and hope and love to those God has sent us to. We're developing Inspire as that center, that place where joy and life can be tested and tasted again. It's why we give our time, it's why we give our talents and our money, because we want as a community, as a gathered body, to make a difference in our world for each other, for our neighbors, for the homeless, for the community. I believe Inspire, I believe all of us here are here because we want to be a part of redefining what church is in our world. There are so many that see church and they see it as a static group of people who are there for themselves. And that is not what Inspire is, and that's not what we want to be. We are not a place, but a people. That wherever we go, we bring hope and joy and love, and it will emanate from every word and deed that we do. We're going to take up an offering, our tithes and offerings, our time of giving. And I just want to say that if you share this vision, if you want Inspire to continue to exist and grow and become that center in the community, that I encourage you to give up in order that together we can give out. It takes all that we have to make our mission move forward. And so I ask that you be generous in your giving, because that allows us to be generous in our community. And I look forward to that happening as we seek God as we go. So we'll now collect our tithes and offerings.